Hello, everyone. This is Olivia from the Customer Enablement team. Thanks for joining and welcome to another session of our Day One and Beyond series, where we take you through various topics and activities related to building out on Oracle Cloud. Our today's session is the Oracle Cloud Security QuickStart, which will cover the various security features and services offered by Oracle Cloud Infrastructure to ensure your Oracle Cloud workloads. And I'd like to introduce Brandon and Bhakti as the main presenters. And with that, I will hand it over to Bhakti to get us started.
Thank you, Olivia. So what are we going to cover today? We will start with security of the cloud. Here we will discuss what Oracle has already built in and what is foundational in OCI for security. We will talk about Oracle security principles, shared responsibility model, and compliance. The second portion will be security in the cloud. So this is where we will be talking about tools and services that you can leverage depending on what are your requirements. So let it be identity and access management or data protection or monitoring and prevention services. By end of this presentation, you should be able to describe the shared responsibility model and how it applies to your environment and who is responsible for what. Then explain OCI's identity and access management concepts and strategy. Compare security services available in OCI and their use cases. And the last portion will be demo. Brandon will show you how you can set up and configure CloudGuard. Okay, let's get started and we will first talk about security of the cloud. We are starting with security, Oracle security principles here. So what does Oracle strive to accomplish for customers when it comes to making security easier? We focus on 5 things. First one being ease of use. So this is highly prioritized. Security is a complex problem. We are aware of that. This is a complex problem to solve, but we want our services to be as easy as possible to work with for our customers. A lot of things in your environment are going to be single click to enable the services, and some stuff will be already there by default. Next one, what Oracle does try to provide our customers is transparency. So we call it always on security posture with integrated controls. We provide log data. So we provide audit logs, then service log, custom logs, and also security analytics to audit and monitor actions on your resources. So this visibility enables you to meet your audit requirements and also reduce operational risk. Next one is prescriptive. So we not only want our customers to see what's happening in there or know what's happening in their environments, but we also want to provide recommendations with how to remediate or prevent those issues. Next one is automation. So automation is a key theme across Oracle, and it's certainly true when it comes to domain of security. You can set up automated responses to the issues, and we want to automate as many routine tasks for you as we can and enable to spend time on higher level issues. And the last one is unified. Everything is meant to work together. OCI security services as well as tools that are available, all are available within the integrated OCI console. Now let's quickly look at how shared responsibility model looks like once you are in cloud. So as you can see here on the screen, when you're on premises, you're responsible for everything, physical layer, then infrastructure, network, guest OS, application, data, everything. Now, when it comes to the shared responsibility model that applies to IaaS, first let's start with IaaS. OCI is responsible for securing everything at physical layer, right? Data center access, then your network, bare metal, up to and including the hypervisors that virtualize instances. In case of application containers, OCI is also responsible for securing the host operating systems underneath those containers. In contrast, in PaaS, you can see here, OCI is also managing now the guest operating system to enable the subscribers to focus more on application development and delivery. Here you can see as you move from IaaS to PaaS to SaaS, more and more responsibility is given to OCI. as compared to what you usually you're required to do to manage your infrastructure when on premises. For today's conversation, we are going to mainly focus on security. How does OCI demonstrate its commitment to security, privacy, and compliance in cloud, right? So we have here external documentation outlining security best practices, how to achieve level of compliance that you need, white papers, OCI security architecture, all that documentation is available. Next one, also we have here alignment collateral. So if you need GDPR, depending on the location that you're in, or if you're deploying across different regions. Also, if you have pharmaceutical implementation, GXP plays important role there. We have white paper for that as well. So here we are making sure that all collateral is available to you so that you are able to meet the requirements that you have. Next one is compliance reports. So compliance document service in OCI lets you view and download compliance documents and reports. So compliance reports of varieties, like it can be, they can be accessed via OCI console, such as SOC report 1, 2, 3, or your audit reports, certificates, PCI DSS attestation documents, and others. And lastly, audits. So we can also go through audits with you. We can go through security questionnaire to make sure that you're checking all the right boxes. And also you have appropriate documentation for audit. Going into compliance program, OCI compliance here. So we have different certifications and compliance programs across different industries. So this slide really shows a variety of programs that we offer, but this list is not exhaustive. Depending on what you're trying to achieve, right? Where are you trying to achieve regional compliance, such as GDPR? We also have government compliance and also different industry compliance like HIPAA, PCI DSS, or GXP if you have pharma implementation. We also have global ones like SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, and ISO. So there are different ways where we can help you to achieve those and different services that you can leverage. CloudGuard is one of them where you can configure rules that can help you to hit a certain level of compliance. So you just need to make sure that you are enabling those and using them appropriately. So how does this all tie together when it comes to security, right? So from identity, data protection and encryption, protecting your compute instances, then how to set up networking architecture, monitoring and prevention services that we offer, and also how do we protect our services at the edge, right? So it starts with all identity here at the bottom because it spans across all your environments and services. And it's going to be important that you need to handle this part appropriately. You really need to have those users, groups, and policies in place, and also right permissions and access to the resources. Making sure that your data is encrypted, your secrets are being stored safely, and all these services that are listed here contain some certain amount of a sort of security that you need to pay attention to so that you can set up a good security posture for your environments in OCI. Let's talk about off-box network virtualization concept and how do OCI isolates its network to improve its improve your security posture. So like typical first generation cloud here, if an attack compromises a virtual machine instance and subsequently a hypervisor, there is actually no barrier to prevent somebody from even modifying the network further, right? Because the network function is managed by the same hypervisor and that has been compromised. This can also lead to several threats to host on the network and also could expose private tenant data. Versus in case of Oracle second generation cloud here, we have custom designed SmartNIC that isolates and virtualizes the network separately. SmartNIC isolates the software from the host and it prevents a compromised instance from further compromising the network. Starting with the services themselves, we will start with identity and access management first. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure's identity and access management, it lets you control who has access to your cloud resources. You can control what type of access a group of users have and to which specific resources. With Oracle Fusion apps, then federating with third-party applications, working with on-premises applications, granting and managing permissions to users and groups within OCI, to different OCI services, and even working with distributed cloud environments. A lot of customers take advantage of multiple clouds, so make sure that you have those permissions and federate across. Identity and access management acts as an identity store. It does authentication, helps with authentication, access management, then lifecycle management of those users, and also access governance that gives you visibility to govern access to cloud as well as on-premise environment. And all this is combined into OCI IAM. OCI IAM provides a set of identity and access management features, right? So I would like to describe it in terms of four buckets. First one, inbound authentication and single sign-on. Second one, identity store and lifecycle management. Then outbound authentication and single sign-on. And also we have Oracle Cloud IAM policies. Starting with first one, inbound authentication and single sign-on. So this is how users are authenticated into the service. We also have here multi-factor authentication. We have adaptive security. So adaptive security allows to evaluate session context in the real time. So looking at the factors such as the user's device, is it trusted, or what is the location that the request is coming from, or recent behavior of that particular user. And all this telemetry is used to make decisions about whether to allow or deny the access. Then here we also have identity store and lifecycle management. So this is about getting user accounts into the service, then managing their attributes, roles and group permissions or memberships, assigning permissions, then provisioning and deprovisioning accounts, synchronization of the automation of the synchronization, and also setting security policies. Then we will talk about outbound authentication. So after we know who the user is and what permissions they have, this is how we enable single sign-on to the target application. So we have app gateway here that can be leveraged. And lastly, we also have policies at the top. So this is what we are going to go through more in details in coming slides. So first one, let's start talking about compartments. Compartment is a logical container for your resources, so such as your virtual cloud networks, your instances, your databases, all that can be grouped in the compartments. And this can be accessed only by groups that have been given permission to. So compartments let you organize your resources and control access. It matters how the compartment structure is designed, since you'll be giving access to the resources based on that design. So you can create different compartments to organize your resources, whether it can be based on environment or by team or different projects. And then you can apply policies to the groups for those compartments, depending on who you want to give access to what resources in those compartments. Compartments are global, so you can access compartment from any region that your tenancy has subscription to. On this slide, you see here the root compartment. So root compartment is created when your tenancy is provisioned. So you can think of root compartment like a folder in the file system. Now here you can see there are different groups. Infrastructure admin group have been given access to, it has been given access to infrastructure compartment. Then shared admin group has been given access to compartment called shared services. And in case you have an overarching user groups like identity and access management admin group here, you want to give them access to the different levels of compartment structure, right? So what you can do here is you can give access to the topmost compartment here, and that permission will trickle down to the child compartment. When creating subcompartment, permissions are inherited from compartments higher up in the hierarchy. So this is another thing to keep in mind when designing your compartment structure. The syntax for policy statement is shown here, and this is to give access to the resources in a compartment. The verbs are listed here in the order of least amount of ability to the most, and a few common family resource types are listed on the right side here. For one example can be allow group network admins to manage virtual network family in network compartment. Here, where conditions are optional, but they let you get more granular with your policy syntax. For example, where resources have certain tags or a particular compartment IDs. One thing to notice here that statement begins with the word allow. Policies only allow access, they cannot deny. So instead, there is an implicit deny, which means that by default, you just cannot do anything with any resources. You have to be granted, they have to be granted access through policies. Here are some more examples of policies. Policy A, allow group A to manage compute in compartment A. Policy B, allow group B to inspect compute in compartment B. So here we have compartment A and two VMs in that compartment. Policy A is attached to that compartment. So user A in group A can manage these two VMs in compartment A. Here we also have compartment B with two VMs there, and policy B is attached to compartment B. So user B in group B can inspect those two virtual machines. User A cannot do anything with any of the VM in compartment B, and user B cannot do anything with any VM in compartment A. Policies can also apply to your tenancies instead of just one compartment. So the syntax will just replace the compartment name with tenancy. If you give a permission to or access to a group to the tenancy, the group automatically gets the same type of access to all the compartments inside the tenancy. Now let's start talking about data protection. Oracle uses encryption at rest and in transit. Data at rest is always encrypted by default. Encryption cannot be turned off. The block volume, object storage buckets, then file storage, database services, it is all enabled at rest data encryption by default, and it is done using AES algorithm with 256-bit encryption. Data in transit is encrypted with TLS 1.2, and data in transit between two OCI regions or availability domains is encrypted using MACsec protocol. If you want to encrypt things with your own keys, the keys that you manage and not Oracle managed keys, we have OCI Vault service here. So OCI Key Management Service, this provides centralized management and control of encryption keys for data stored in OCI without worrying about a lot of administrative tasks. It is fully managed and it's high available, so you don't have to really worry about hardware provisioning or software patching. So this uses hardware security modules, HSMs, to store and protect your encryption keys that meets different security standards, right? So FIPS 142 level 3. It integrates well with other OCI services such as object storage, autonomous database, fusion applications for protecting data stored in these services. You can protect data at rest and in transit by supporting various encryption key types, and this includes symmetric keys as well as asymmetric keys. Now here, let's look at how you can further safeguard the database workloads, right? Oracle Data Safe, this focuses on security of your data. It is included with all Oracle Database Cloud services, also available for use in on-premises or in cloud compute or for third-party clouds as well. The enablement process differs depending on where your database is running. This provides a set of features for protecting sensitive and regulated data in Oracle Cloud databases. So here, first one, security assessment. This helps you assess the security of database configurations. It analyzes database configuration, then user accounts, security controls, and then reports the findings with recommendations for remediation activities that follow best practices to reduce or mitigate the risk. Another feature here is user assessment. So this helps you to assess the security of database users and also identify high risk users. So it reviews information from your users in data dictionary on your target databases and calculates a risk score for each user. For example, it evaluates the user types, how users are authenticated, then the password policies assigned to each user, and how long it has been since each user had changed their password, right? And then it provides a direct link to audit records related to each user. With this information, you can deploy appropriate security control and policies. Next feature is data discovery. So this lets you find sensitive data in your databases. You can tell this data discovery what kind of sensitive data to search for, and then it inspects the actual data in your database and its data dictionary, and then it returns a list of sensitive columns to you. So by default, data discovery can search for a variety of sensitive data pertaining to identification or biographic, financial, healthcare, then employment, and also academic information. Data masking is another feature here. This is a way for you to mask your data so that the data is safe for non-production purposes. For example, organizations often need to create copies of their production data, right, to support development and test activities. So simply copying the production data, it exposes sensitive data to new users. So to avoid this security risk, you can use data masking to replace the sensitive data with realistic but fictitious data. And the last feature here I want to talk about it is activity auditing. So this lets you audit user activity on your databases so that you can monitor database usage and also be alerted of unusual database activities. So with that, now I will hand it over to Brandon.
Alrighty, next I'll take us through monitoring, detection, and prevention. And we're going to look at some of the fundamental security tools that will help us with these different areas. So first up, we have CloudGuard. And with CloudGuard, this is a included tool, and it's definitely going to be a best practice to leverage CloudGuard and all the capabilities included with CloudGuard. You can turn it on, and it's going to scan different targets within your tenancy and detect different problems, whether those problems are related to user activity or configuration issues. There's also built-in responders that can apply fixes, provide you with recommendations that fall in line with OCI's best practice to mitigate risk, and it can be used to examine different targets as well. So let's take a look at some of the key terms and definitions when you're leveraging CloudGuard. So first you have targets, and targets are going to set the scope of resources that are going to be examined. So within OCI, the targets are going to be compartments and their descendant structures, right? So the way that compartments are set up is it's essentially like a hierarchy, and these compartments have a parent-child relationship. So you can see here, you have a topmost compartment, which is going to be called the root compartment. And then every other compartment or thing that you create within your account or within your tenancy is going to fall within that root compartment. So you can see we have a target set up on this topmost green compartment, and it's going to be applied to the descendant structures of that compartment as well. So all the child compartments there are also going to have those policies applied. So that's what a target is, right? You're going to set up your target, which will be a compartment, and the descendant structures. Next up, we have detectors. So detectors are going to be the components that identify issues with configuration of your resources or any user activity, and also alert when an issue is found. These are some examples here. So compute instance has public IP, right? That can easily be scanned and detected. Suspicious IP, bucket is public. These are some good examples. From there, after that detector picks up on one of these issues, a problem will be generated. And a problem is essentially a notification that a configuration or user activity is a potential security issue to your environment. And there's different severity levels of problems. You have from low all the way to critical risk. And we can take a look at this deeper when we jump into the demonstration. Finally, we have responders, and responders provide notifications and corrective actions for different security problems that have been detected within your compartments. So some of the responders, some of the examples here, so stop the instance, right? And some of these responders have multiple different automated actions that can be taken. So as an example, right, if the detector picks up on the fact that a compute instance is public, right, your responder could be to stop the instance. It could be to remove the public IP. It could be to, terminate the instance. And then also there's going to be like an action plan that's provided or a recommendation on what to do in this scenario. And some of the responders don't have built-in automation. So in that case, it would give you the recommended approach to mitigate the detected risk. And then from there, you can actually go in, it'll point you directly where that issue's at. You can go in, fix that issue, and then come back to CloudGuard and mark that issue as remediated. Suspend user, make bucket private. So, right, if a bucket is public, the responder for that would be to make that bucket private. And that's a critical risk. When you have public buckets in object storage, that could pose a critical risk to your environment. And there's multiple different things that you can do to prevent that from happening, right? You can leverage what's called a security zone. We'll take a look at that next after CloudGuard, which will prohibit public buckets from being created. But in this case, right, CloudGuard's a more reactive approach. It's going to use detectors to find different problems. So when it finds the problem that you have public buckets, it's going to provide you with an automated remediation to make that bucket private. And also, more information about the course of action that should be taken when you encounter these problems. So let's take a look at an example here. We have a scenario with public buckets, right? As I mentioned, this could be a potential area of attack, right? If you have critical sensitive data in public buckets with an object storage, maybe a user is kind of new to OCI or new to the cloud and they create a public bucket, put some data in there, right? That's now accessible to anyone that, can access that public bucket. Right? It's available publicly. So if that's the case, right, we have CloudGuard in place to detect that problem. And with CloudGuard, you can mitigate that risk. So you can see here, the bucket visibility is public, right? A user is going to make that object storage bucket public. The CloudGuard configuration detector would pick up on that, and it would essentially create a problem with the severity level that's critical in this case. So here you can see the problem with the associated severity level. From there, you have a responder recipe. So the responder recipe, this also ties into OCI event service. So event service is another important tool, right? With the OCI event service, anytime a resource changes state within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, that would be essentially captured as an event, or an event would be emitted from that state change. And as an example, right, the um, OCI event in this case could be used to fire off a notification, right? So if you wanted an email notification that says, hey, we have a public bucket and object storage, please take appropriate action, right? You can use this to trigger a notification. We also have OCI functions, so you can use the event service to invoke a function or trigger a function to run. And a function is essentially, it's like serverless computing, right? You don't have to worry about managing underlying infrastructure. You're only worried about the code, right? You're only paying for the execution time of your code. So if you want to run some like simple scripts with OCI functions, you can use the event service to trigger that function to run. We also have the CloudGuard operator, so they can go in, they can remediate the problem, and then the responder, this is like the automated approach. So there's a one-click remediate button. The operator can click remediate, and then from there, the responder would change that bucket visibility from public to private. And then from there, that critical risk would be mitigated. So this is an example of one scenario, but there are many, many different scenarios where you need that, extra um, visibility into the problems within your tenancy, right? And we'll take a look at all of the different rules when we jump into the demonstration. So the next tool we have pertaining to security within the cloud would be security zones. So as CloudGuard was reactive, right, it's going to find different problems pertaining to user activity or existing configurations and provide you with recommendations or remediations. Security zones are preventative. So you can use security zones to explicitly deny user action or explicitly deny things from taking place within your environments. So a security zone is going to be associated with a compartment and a security zone recipe. And what's nice about this is Oracle will provide you with what's called a maximum security zone recipe. And then what you can do is you can create your own, and you use what Oracle provides you. You pick the rules that you want to enforce on a compartment. And then from there, you can create your own recipe and apply that to your compartments, right? Because not everything will apply to every environment. So we give you that flexibility to pick and choose which rules you want to use when it comes to defining your security zone recipes. OCI is going to validate these operations against a list of policies that you define within that recipe. So if any of these policies are violated, the operation would be explicitly denied. So in the case of public buckets, right, you could leverage a security zone to explicitly deny that action from taking place. So you can essentially block out the creation of public buckets, right? If you try to create a public bucket in a security zone that has that policy that forbids the creation, the user would get error message, right? This would be used to explicitly deny public buckets from being created. So this is one of the tools that Oracle gives you that acts like a preventative guardrail to help mitigate the risk of human error within your environment. Next up, we have a WAF service, or Web Application Firewall. And with our Web Application Firewall, it provides you with the ability to create and manage rules for different internet threats, including cross-site scripting, SQL injection, PHP injection, and other OWASP-defined vulnerabilities. There's also different capabilities that we'll look at on the next slide, but there's some things like access control rules. You can limit access based upon geography or signature of the request. And as the diagram shows, typically you'll attach the web application firewall in front of a load balancer, right? So when you go into the console and configure this, you'll attach it to a public endpoint, which in most cases would be a load balancer. So some more of the features, right? We have access control. With access control, you can restrict or control access to your web apps. Bot management, you can set up CAPTCHA, you can identify whether requests are coming from humans or machines. You can block any non-human requests. Rate limiting. So that's a big one. You can set up rate limiting to protect against layer 7 DOS attacks, right? You can go in and define limits on the amount of requests coming in. And you can also set up protection rules. You can hide your origin server, you can inspect traffic as it comes in or as it leaves. And again, this web application firewall will sit in front of your applications. Next up, we have a Bastion service. So with the Bastion service, traditionally companies would need to spin up like a jump host or a traditional Bastion server or Bastion host on a virtual machine, right? So within OCI, you still have that capability, but we also have a Bastion service. So with the Bastion service, it's going to eliminate the cost of the traditional, jump box, the deployment, and then also the management pane associated with those jump hosts, right? So now it's Bastion, essentially Bastion as a service. You can go in and you can set up time-bound connections to resources that don't have public endpoints, right? So you can set up time-bound connections to resources, hosts that have private IPs. All of the access is going to be governed with identity and access management policies, which will allow authorized users to connect from specific IPs to target resources using SSH sessions. So these bastions are going to be essential in environments with stricter resource controls. So as an example, you can use a bastion host or a bastion um, instance, bastion service to connect to compute instances in compartments that are associated with security zones, right? There's policies and rules that you can use within a security zone to prohibit instances from having public endpoints. So you can use the Bastion service, in conjunction with that. And another thing that's nice about this is that all of the administrative actions, like who or when created, deleted, updated, fetched the Bastion and the Bastion session, all of that information is going to be recorded within our audit service and the OCI event service. All right, so just some things to remember before I jump into the demonstration. So in a shared multi-tenant computing environment, there is a shared responsibility when it comes to security of what's running in the cloud. So Oracle is going to be responsible for the security of the underlying infrastructure, and you will be responsible for securing your workloads and configuring the security of your services. So, as Bhakti showed, right, there's the shared responsibility model, and you have different types of service offerings within the cloud, right? Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And with each level of service offering, right, in order that I just mentioned, you're taking an additional layer of responsibility and placing that on the CSP, in this case, Oracle as the cloud service provider. Point number two, a least privilege approach is used to grant access to production systems. So as an example, when you're operating in Oracle Cloud, right, you create a new user, they're not going to have access to anything until you explicitly assign them to groups that have permissions and policy statements that grant them permissions to interact with different resources, right? So we use this least privilege approach, and you'll see this key theme across many of our tools. Um, if you want to use like a new tool like Bastion Service, right? You have to create a group. Maybe you call it Bastion Administrators, right? And then from there, you assign users to that group and give that group the appropriate permissions they need to interact with the Bastion service. And when we talk about security in the cloud, like one of the best practices to keep in mind is to create service level administrator groups, right? So that's an easy thing to do within identity and access management, create service level administrator groups. Um, and from there, you can pick and choose people who are assigned who have admin access at the service level instead of, at a higher level. Number three, take a hierarchical view of your security configuration. Start by addressing foundational security issues and then address the security of specific infrastructure resources, right? So before you deploy anything in the cloud, you're going to want to start with the foundational security piece, right? Defining your compartments, the organizational, logical container system of your resources, right? The logical containerization of your resources. How are you going to build that out and define that? Another foundational security issue, right? Setting up users and groups, defining all of that. And then you'll want to address the security of specific infrastructure resources. Like maybe you use vulnerability scanning on your compute resources, right? Or maybe you want to use data safe to get that single pane of glass view when it comes to the security of your Oracle database fleet. So just keep that in mind, start by addressing the foundational issues, and then you can focus on specific resource security issues. And then number four, use CloudGuard to examine OCI resources for different weaknesses related to configuration and examine your operators for risky activity. We're going to jump into this here in a lot more detail, but a lot of the things I showed pertaining to CloudGuard tie into other services. So let's take a look at that within the demonstration here. All right, so now you all should be able to see the OCI console. So when you first get logged into Oracle Cloud Infrastructure into your account, this is going to be like the main landing page that you're met with. So if you come over to the menu, the navigation menu at the top left, we have a whole section on identity and security. This is where all of our components and all of our services that we talked about today are going to be located. So you have identity, domains. This is where you'll find your users and your groups. You have policies, so granting groups permissions, compartments, CloudGuard, right? Firewalls, web application firewall, certificate service, vault service, manage your keys, Bastion service, compliance section, audit log, vulnerability scanning, security zones. So let's focus on CloudGuard first. So if we go into CloudGuard, this is going to give us a nice overview on the different problems that have been detected within our tenancy. So if it's your first time using CloudGuard, you'll have a button on the screen here to turn it on and enable CloudGuard. And then after you enable it and it runs for a little bit, it will start generating these problems for you. So right at the top, it gives you a security score. This is going to be out of 100. The higher the number, the better. In this case, this is like a demonstration tenancy. So we're constantly building out and testing different proof of concepts, different solutions. So It's hard to keep a good security score when you're consistently changing and building out demonstrations. We also have a risk score, security recommendations. So the security recommendations piece, this is going to pick up on the top 10 problems that have been detected most frequently, and then give you recommendations on how to fix that. Problem snapshot, problems grouped by compartment, region. So if you're operating in multiple regions, right, you can group it by region, see where majority of the problems are occurring. Looks like in our east data centers, we have the most problems, but then followed by, out west, we have quite a bit there as well. User activity problems. So you can view user activity problems on a map. You can drill in, get as pretty granular. You can select on one of these, and it shows you the user activity problems, the events that occurred from that location. You can drill into it more and see the specific problems. And then responder status. So if we recently performed remediations, you would see that reflected here. But as I mentioned, this is a demonstration environment, so we're not in here, performing remediations all the time, so you don't see anything reflected here. And so if we go over to the top left, right, we have some different things like recipes, configurations. So let's take a look at the recipes first. And I'm going to go into the topmost level compartment, right? So as Bhakti mentioned, there's a hierarchy to these compartments, right? So your topmost level is going to contain the recipes that are provided by Oracle. And you can see those clearly here that are denoted where it says Oracle managed in parentheses. You can go into one of these, right? And best practice is going to be to clone this. So you'll come into this, you'll click the clone button at the top here, give it a name. So you can say company X, um, configuration detector, right? You'll create a clone. And then after you create the clone, you can go in and you can customize this. So for the sake of time, I've already created a clone. So if I go back to my recipes, you can see we have the clone here. It's called Vision Corp. This is like our fictitious company we use for demonstration. So Vision Corp configuration detector. And then you can actually go into the rules and you can make modifications, right? So you can change the risk level. Let's take a look at one of these here. So VCN has local peering gateway attached. So we can go in and we can edit the rule. You can change the status, disabled, enabled, change the risk level, critical, high, medium, minor, low. And you can do this after it's already attached to a target. So you attach it to a target, and let's say this problem keeps occurring, and you need to go back into the configuration rule, like the detector rules, the configuration, and make a change, right? You can do that. We don't limit you on that. And let's say in this example here, we have a virtual cloud network with an LPG attached, and we know we're using a hub and spoke model, so we're running an LPG on our VCN. So in that case, right, if this is enabled, it's going to generate that problem in the CloudGuard system. So to mitigate that or to make sure that that problem is not generated, right, we can disable this altogether because we know we have that attached. Or let's say it's, you know, something that was a critical risk, but really it's a low risk, right? You can modify that as well. And we also have the option for conditional groups. So if you want to, only apply this rule to these VCNs, right? Let's say we're going to enable this for networks that have this OCID, and the OCID is like a unique identifier. So only networks that have this unique identifier would be part of this conditional group that this rule would apply to, right? So you have a lot of flexibility when you define these rules and what they apply to. You can also make custom lists as well and manage lists. So with a manage list, right, you can go in and you can define a list of OCIDs in this example. You can also use tags. Right, so you can say like anything with this tag, we're going to apply this to, or you can say we're not going to apply this to, right? So you have that flexibility as well. But these are some of the rules when it comes to problems, configuration problems that will arise, right? These are different things that it will detect. And CloudGuard ties into many other services, right? Networking, VCN issues, user issues, so identity and access management, vulnerability scanning, scan host has vulnerabilities, load balancing, NSGs, database systems, identity and access management, computing, data safe, object storage, block volumes. So, right, you're definitely going to want to leverage CloudGuard, and it's a free tool. You just come in, you enable it, right? You'll define these detector rules. And then after you define these detector recipes or detector rules, you'll go into the configuration section here on the left. You can go into targets, and this is how you define a target. So you just click create target, give it a name. You can say, this is for production. So you can have this, like this specific set of rules is for our production environment, and then you can have a totally different set of rules for your development environment or for your testing environment, right? Or if you're running different systems, like you're running, let's say, PeopleSoft, right? You could have specific rules for that environment. And then if you're running like Essbase, right, you can have different rules for that environment. So you'll give it a target name. Then you'll select the compartment. So what's the target going to be? Where are we going to apply this? Say, all right, let's apply it at this demo compartment. Go next, you'll select the different recipes that you want to apply. So that's what we just looked at. So you can go in, you can say, all right, let's choose the recipe that we just modified, that we just tailored to fit our needs. Right. And there's different kinds, right? We only looked at the configuration one, but there's one for configuration, one for user activity, instance security, workload protection. And then you'll select your recipes, you'll go next, and then you can just create that. And then from there, it'll take a little bit of time. It will scan the target, and then it will start generating different problems. So we have a couple minutes left. Let's just take a look at one of the problems here. So if you go into alerts, you can see we have it broken down, recommendations, broken down by problems. And you can see what some of these look like here. So if we take a look at this problem, right, bucket is public, we can view the problem. And you'll notice this shows up multiple times, right? So these are different instances of this problem occurring. And you can see each resource like, hey, this bucket here is public, this bucket here is public, this bucket here is public, right? So when you click into it, in this specific example, there's a one-click remediation. So it's automated. You click remediate, choose what you want to do. So in this case, there's only one option, right? Make bucket private, and then you just click remediate, and CloudGuard would handle that for you and remediate that issue. I'm going to hand it over back over to Olivia if she has any closing thoughts or comments.
Yes, so we had a question in the chat saying, what does this mean if it's a free product to use and that the CloudGuard subscription is not available? And so it's just typing response, but CloudGuard is free for OCI configuration, OCI activity. The only thing to keep in mind, as Brandon was showing in the console, for some of the problems that have more automated remediation, that might come with the cost because you're using some services like functions that do have a charge. But for the most part, as Brandon mentioned, it's a free tool to use. Other resources or ways of learning more, and this will be in the slide deck PDF. But there's live labs, Oracle Learning. We also do have this Day One and Beyond series right here, but we also do have more one-on-one enablement with personal training and live labs. And there's also Code Innovate, so a 5 half-day event with Oracle engineers to help co-develop a use case. So we did list some emails here if you want to learn a little bit more or reach out. And then lastly, we have our core series here, but we also have analytics, hands-on, cloud native, security, and did you know? So yeah, please feel free to explore those. And thanks everyone.